Today, I want to talk about habits versus goals in terms of helping you to live the life that you want as an artist. This week, I've been thinking about a couple of videos and books, and there's been a trend throughout the things that I've just been encountering in the past week that made me want to stop everything and record this voiceover for you. In fact, I don't even have a painting that I'm going to talk about. So whatever you see associated with this voiceover is probably just me creating some visual content for you. But what's really important is what I am here to say this week. So the big theme in all of the things that I've been paying attention to comes down to this idea of goal versus identity, or to put it a slightly different way, goals versus habits. So I first started thinking about this week when I saw an old video come back to the surface in my social media feed. It's by Sohee Lee, who is a trainer and fitness professional, and she just puts together really excellent content around the psychology as well as the physiology of exercise and achieving fitness goals or living an active lifestyle. So Sohee has this really excellent video that she calls the paper towel analogy. And in it, she starts the video and she has 2 full rolls of paper towels. And she's talking about how building habits is a lot like taking 1 sheet off of the roll of paper towels every day. When you first take 1 sheet off and you compare the fresh, untouched roll of paper towels on one side of the film to the other roll of paper towels that now is short 1 sheet, you really can't see the difference between the 2. But over time, taking away just 1 sheet of paper towel at a time, you notice that 1 roll of paper towels starts steadily getting smaller. But it's not until you would be at the 90-day mark or the 180-day mark or the 365-day mark. I love this video because it speaks to the fact that for most of us, we are primed to believe that in order to get big, exciting results, we need to take really big action. But what's actually effective is a very small habit change that you make now and you stick with consistently over time. This actually falls right in line with what James Clear talks about in the first chapter of his book, Atomic Habits. And that is that achieving results are the compound interest of the habits that you're building up. The investment that you put in on any given day doesn't look like much, but when you look at the total investment over, say, a year or 10 years, that is a huge difference that you will never replicate by putting in 1 big burst of effort. And I realized this is what I see with artists all the time, and I know this experience myself. The temptation is that when you sit down to make a painting, that you put in every ounce of education and effort and attention you could possibly put towards that painting. And you expect that the result is that if you work hard enough, that painting is going to be your breakthrough. That's going to be the one where suddenly you paint like Sargent. But if you've been paying attention, you might guess at this point that what really makes a difference is creating habits and systems for yourself that encourage you to show up to your artistic practice day after day for years. And after you have the compounded interest of years worth of work, you will see that payoff. And this is honestly the difference I see between artists who have, quote, made it versus artists who want to, quote, make it. I use this term very lightly and loosely because I'm definitely using the jargon that I think people are inclined to throw around. But I'm sure if you talk to any artist who you consider to have made it, chances are there's a decent chance that that artist doesn't feel like they've made it, that they feel like they're an imposter. So anyway, just wanted to put that caveat on there. But the artists who have, quote, made it are the ones who typically are just showing up over and over and over and over, and they're doing that no matter what, whereas the artists who really want to, quote, make it are the ones who really want to put in a huge burst of energy and see a short-term payoff. And so when I talk to somebody who is really passionate about reaching their artistic goals, one of the most impactful things I can do is actually encourage them to reframe their thinking here. So instead of thinking about reaching the finish line. Let's instead think about what needs to happen in order to turn them into the artist they want to be. So it's not about the achievement of making one really great painting. It's about becoming the artist that you really want to live your life as. And I think this is something that people have a lot of misconceptions around. So I want to set this record straight right now. When I think about the artists that I know personally, that I also know a lot of you look up to, they spend their time quite differently from what I think a lot of aspiring professionals or artists who have big goals but they're toward the beginning of their journey. What those artists do, the professionals, are often, it's quite different from what people expect. The biggest thing that I noticed is that people really underestimate the amount of planning and administrative time that goes into prepping to paint. Your favorite artists spend a great deal of time coming up with ideas, thumbnailing images, planning photo shoots that don't always go the way they had hoped, creating paintings that don't quite hit the mark, doing things like drawing practice and value practice over and over and over and over. But a lot of artists I talk to who aspire to be like those painters want to do like a few drawing exercises and arrive, or do a few value studies and arrive, and not have to go back and spend time laboring over those fundamentals. Or a really common one is people wanting to make a really great painting off of a reference that they captured in the moment on their iPhone. Or wanting to make a really great painting that come from a photo you found on Pinterest and not one that you planned and took yourself. The truth is, the great paintings that you really admire, chances are, especially if you are listening to this channel rather than like a concept artist or an illustrator's channel, your favorite paintings didn't just come out of somebody's imagination. They came with a great deal of preparation and planning, finding models, researching costumes, trying dozens of compositions, spending a lot of time doing preliminary drawing studies and drawing work, mapping out the value structure, testing and failing and discovering and pushing forward. So when you think about your favorite paintings, I would encourage you to go and imagine that you are the artist who made that piece. Ask yourself, what would it take for somebody to have seen this image in person for them to be able to paint off of that reference? How many costumes would you have to research and purchase and fit to the model? How many models would you have to test out? How many locations would you have to scout? How many different weather conditions would you have to plan around to get exactly the correct lighting? All right. My hope is that you come away from that realizing that you can really give yourself permission to see yourself as an artist rather than trying to make yourself come up with the finished product that that artist would make. I hope that that makes sense, but the distinction is if you actually go back and you read Atomic Habits, it's a really great book. It's very helpful. I recommend it to all of my students because I see the impact that it can make. But if you go back and you read this book, one thing that James Clear stresses is that thinking in terms of reaching a goal often sets you up for a great deal of frustration and impatience, and you can get into a negative cycle from that. Conversely, if you think of yourself as an artist, if you focus on your identity as an artist, what naturally comes from that is you start to put together behaviors that match that identity. So if you think of yourself as an artist, you will give yourself permission to take the time to plan a photo shoot, to get good reference to paint off of, to spend time engaging in drawing exercises and value studies because those keep your skills sharp. They aren't something that you graduate out of having to do. And if you wind up putting together systems around all of that, if you intentionally make time for those habits that align with that identity, those systems are going to set you up for success. You know, if you make the time for drawing and value exercises, you're going to get really good at those things. And you're going to have the skills necessary to create the subtlety that you need to ultimately make the kinds of paintings that you are excited by. What I've actually told my students, and I hope a lot of them listen to this video, but this is going to be really helpful no matter who you are. My hope is that your big takeaway here really comes into play when I give you an exercise to engage with. So if I have you do a master study, or if I have you do drawing exercises, or I have you do exercises to teach you exactly what you need in order to create a reference that's going to set you up to make a great painting, I want those kinds of exercises to really have you come away feeling empowered because you have learned the lesson from them, not because you have gotten huge results from a single painting session. To go back to the example of a painting reference, let's say that I help you to understand all of the pieces that need to go in to creating a really good reference for you to paint off of. You can think of that in terms of achieving a particular goal, or you can think of that in terms of, wow, I really feel empowered to be able to go out and get the kind of reference I need to make a really great painting. If you are thinking in terms of results, that one really good reference sets you up to make one good painting, which is great. But if you come away from that understanding, wow, I have all the tools in my toolkit to understand how to do this forever, no matter what subject I'm trying to paint, then you can set yourself up to make hundreds of amazing paintings. And that is where the power lies. And the reason for that is that repetition and consistency in giving yourself the literal time to achieve that compounding interest in terms of the payoff from your habits, that's going to require time for you to get there. And if you have the formula, if you have the systems to be able to maximize your use of that time, that's when you're going to see those long-term effects and results really paying off for you. In my painting practice, what this actually looks like for me is really making sure that I have clear takeaways from a given painting. So if a given painting really helped me to understand that much more clearly exactly what I need from a reference, or if I have a better feel on exactly what consistency of paint I need at the block-in stage versus once I am putting finishing touches and impasto on a painting, that's a really helpful takeaway. Or a really common one for my students, if I am helping to give you some tools to help you assess your drawing and check it, I want you to come away from that trusting that you know how to identify if your painting is being held back because of a drawing problem, and you know how to identify exactly how to solve that problem, and you have multiple tools in your toolkit that will enable you to do that. For artists who are on a journey to achieving something really exciting, for the artists out there who are really passionate about achieving your big goals, what sets you up for success is having a structured process to get you from where you are today all the way to being the artist who makes the kinds of paintings that you want to make. And what you need along that process is pretty simple. You need to show up consistently over time, and we need to make sure that you are being intentional with that time and you have systems to support really good long-term habits. So you have the habits to build up your drawing skills effectively. You have the habits to build up your value control effectively. You have mastery over your palette and you know how to match colors that you see effectively. You understand your tools and brushwork, and when you want to have a hard edge versus a soft edge versus a lost edge, you understand how to compose the kinds of images you are drawn to, and you know what planning steps are necessary to get you to that end result. If you have those things, you will reach your long-term goals. This isn't a sprint. This isn't about trying to power through. This is about making sure you really do get there and you do it in a way that's sustainable, that mitigates your chances of burnout. I hope this video has encouraged you to take the steps to think of yourself as an artist and really dig deep and trust what those steps are so that you can stop spinning your wheels, putting in big bursts of energy and wondering why you haven't reached your biggest goals yet. If you would like to learn more about how I break down this process for myself and for the artists that I work with, there is a link to my masterclass below in the description that gives you a really solid overview, and there is a link to apply to work with me in the description as well. All right, until next time, happy painting.